Good evening, and welcome to the Sleeping Zoo, and your facts to fall asleep to. We shift our gaze now to a realm of shadow and submerged silence, descending into the suffocating humidity of the American Southeast to confront a creature that is less an animal and more a living fossil, a breathing geological constant that has watched the rise and fall of civilizations from the waterline. This is the domain of the American alligator. Alligator mississippiensis, the undisputed monarch of the cypress swamp and the sawgrass marsh. To look into the eye of an alligator is to look back through deep time, past the age of mammals, to an era when the archosaurs ruled the earth. And yet this creature is not a relic of the past, but a marvel of modern adaptation, a biological machine perfected for the ambush, the crush, and the endurance of epochs. We begin our exploration of this reptilian titan by dissecting the very architecture of its survival. The physiological fortress that has allowed it to weather ice ages, meteor strikes, and the relentless expansion of humanity. The physical form of the American alligator is a masterclass in armored hydrodynamics, a body plan that has remained virtually unchanged for millions of years, simply because it requires no improvement. At first glance, it appears to be a crude prehistoric log, but a closer inspection reveals a sophisticated interface between organism and environment. The skin is not merely a hide, but a suit of biological armor composed of raised bony plates known as osteoderms or oscutsi, which are embedded within the skin along the back. These osteoderms are heavily vascularized, acting not only as a defense against the teeth of rivals and the environment, but also as thermal collectors, absorbing solar radiation during basking to heat the blood that flows through them, which is then circulated to the core, a critical mechanism for a large ectotherm that must jump-start its metabolism every morning. The coloration of the alligator is a study in countershading and environmental mimicry, ranging from the dark, almost black hues of adults that blend seamlessly with the tannin-stained black water of the swamps, to the vibrant yellow banding of juveniles that disrupts their outline amongst the reeds and marsh grasses. This camouflage is absolute, allowing a 4-meter, 300-kilogram predator to vanish in knee-deep water, becoming nothing more than a shadow and a ripple. The head of the alligator is a marvel of sensory engineering and mechanical force. The skull is broad and shovel-shaped, a distinguishing feature that separates it from the narrower, V-shaped snout of its crocodilian cousins. This broad snout is built to withstand the immense structural stress of its bite, which is among the most powerful in the animal kingdom. The jaw muscles, specifically the massive adductors located at the rear of the skull, are capable of generating a crushing force of nearly 3,000 pounds per square inch, enough to shatter the carapace of a turtle or the femur of a deer with a single, terrifying snap. Yet, in a paradox of muscular design, the muscles responsible for opening the jaws are relatively weak, allowing a human to hold the snout of a large alligator shut with one hand, a vulnerability that belies its offensive power. Within this crushing trap lies a tongue that is fundamentally different from that of a mammal. It is affixed to the floor of the mouth and functions as a palatal valve, sealing the throat completely when the animal is submerged, allowing the alligator to open its mouth underwater to capture prey without drowning its lungs, a critical adaptation for an aquatic ambush predator. The sensory world of the alligator is far more complex than its stoic demeanor suggests. Along the jaws, surrounding the teeth, are thousands of tiny black, dome-shaped receptors known as integumentary sensory organs, or dome pressure receptors. These organs are exquisitely sensitive to vibration and pressure changes in the water, far more sensitive than the human fingertip, allowing the alligator to detect the splash of a fish or the drink of a deer in total darkness, effectively allowing it to hunt by touch without making contact. This tactile radar is augmented by vision that is adapted for low-light conditions, featuring a eye tapetum lucidum behind the retina that reflects light back through the photoreceptors, granting the alligator superior night vision and producing the characteristic crimson eye shine seen in the beam of a flashlight. The eyes are positioned on top of the head, along with the nostrils and ears, allowing the animal to float with its entire body submerged while maintaining full sensory awareness of the surface, a posture of low-profile surveillance that is the hallmark of its hunting strategy. Internally, the alligator possesses a cardiovascular system that is arguably the most sophisticated of any reptile. It possesses a four-chambered heart, similar to mammals and birds, which prevents the mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, allowing for high blood pressure and an active lifestyle. However, it retains a unique feature known as the foramen of Panizza, a valve between the two aortas that allows the alligator to actively shunt blood away from the lungs and recirculate it to the body during long dives. This physiological switch allows the animal to stay submerged for hours by rationing oxygen to vital organs and tolerating high levels of lactic acid and carbon dioxide, essentially turning its body into a closed-loop system for the duration of the ambush or retreat. This metabolic flexibility extends to its digestion. The alligator has an extremely acidic stomach, capable of dissolving bone, horn, and hooves, allowing it to utilize every calorie from its prey. Furthermore, its immune system is legendary, possessing serum proteins that are incredibly effective at killing bacteria, viruses, and fungi, allowing alligators to recover from horrific injuries, including severed limbs and deep lacerations sustained during territorial fights in the septic environment of a swamp without succumbing to infection. We must now place this physiological dreadnought into the context of its habitat, a landscape that the alligator does not merely inhabit, but actively constructs and maintains. The range of alligator mississippiensis stretches across the southeastern United States, from the cypress swamps of North Carolina down to the sawgrass prairies of the Florida Everglades and west to the bayous of Texas. This is a world of water, mud, and vegetation, defined by the hydroperiod, the seasonal rise and fall of water levels. The alligator is the keystone species of this ecosystem, the architect of the wetlands. During the dry season, when water levels recede and the marsh dries up into a cracked plain of mud, the alligator engages in a behavior known as creating a gator hole. Using its snout and tail, the adult alligator excavates a depression in the muck, clearing away vegetation and deepening the pool until it taps into the water table. These gator holes become the only refuges of open water in the drying landscape, attracting fish, turtles, wading birds, and mammals that are desperate for a drink. In saving itself, The alligator saves the biodiversity of the marsh, creating concentrated oases of life that allow the aquatic community to survive until the rains return. The spoil banks created by this excavation provide high ground for willow and cypress trees to take root, increasing the structural diversity of the marsh. Thus, the presence of the alligator dictates the very topography and botany of the wetlands. The behavioral ecology of the alligator is a study in patience, power, and surprising social complexity. While often viewed as solitary, mindless killing machines, alligators exhibit a rich social life, particularly during the breeding season. As spring warms the waters, the swamps begin to resonate with one of the most impressive acoustic displays in nature, the bellowing chorus. Both males and females engage in this vocalization, but the male's display is a spectacle of physics. He inhales deeply, raising his head and tail high out of the water, and produces a deep, resonant roar that is partly infrasonic, below the range of human hearing. This low-frequency sound wave is so powerful that it causes the water around his torso to dance, erupting into a chaotic fizz of droplets known as the water dance. This signal advertises his size, which correlates directly with the depth of the bellow and his territory to rival males and potential mates. This auditory warfare is accompanied by head-slapping and jaw-clapping, creating a complex language of dominance and courtship that regulates the social hierarchy without constant bloodshed. The reproductive cycle of the alligator reveals a level of parental care that challenges the reptilian stereotype. After mating, the female becomes a dedicated engineer, constructing a massive nest mound out of vegetation, mud, and debris. She does not rely on her body heat to incubate the eggs, as a bird would, but rather on the heat generated by the composting of a rotting vegetation. She lays a clutch of 20 to 50 hard-shelled eggs in the center of this mound, and then assumes a vigil that will last for 65 days. She defends the nest with absolute ferocity against raccoons, opossums, and even bears, fasting for the duration of the incubation. The sex of the hatchlings is not determined by genetics, but by the temperature of the nest, a phenomenon known as temperature-dependent sex determination. Eggs incubated at temperatures above 34 degrees Celsius develop into males, while those incubated below 30 degrees become females, with intermediate temperatures producing a mix. This biological quirk ties the population dynamics of the alligator directly to the climate, making them sentinels of environmental change. When the hatchlings are ready to emerge, they begin to vocalize from inside the egg, producing a high-pitched yelping sound. Hearing this, the mother gently excavates the nest and, in a moment of profound tenderness, picks the hatchlings up in her terrifying jaws, rolling the eggs against the roof of her mouth to help crack the shell, and carries them down to the water. She will protect this pod of babies for up to 2 years, defending them against birds, fish, and other alligators, creating a nursery zone where the next generation can grow past the vulnerable stage. The ecological role of the alligator as an apex predator is vital for the health of the wetlands. They are opportunistic feeders, consuming a diet that shifts with their size. Hatchlings eat insects and small fish. Subadults take crustaceans, snakes, and birds, and full-grown adults target turtles, large fish, deer, wild boars, and even smaller alligators. This predation pressure regulates the populations of prey species, preventing overgrazing of marsh vegetation by herbivores like nutria and muskrat. The alligator is also the primary predator of the invasive Burmese python in the Everglades, engaging in a clash of titans that determines the future of the Florida ecosystem. Their hunting technique often involves the death roll, a kinetic maneuver used to disassemble prey that is too large to swallow whole. By clamping onto a limb or chunk of meat and spinning their body wildly along the longitudinal axis, the alligator generates immense torque, twisting the meat free from the bone. This behavior allows them to consume carcasses of almost any size, recycling nutrients back into the aquatic system. However, the story of the American alligator is also a dramatic narrative of conservation and human interaction, a phoenix-like rise from the ashes of near extinction. By the middle of the 20th century, the alligator had been hunted to the brink of oblivion. Unregulated market hunting for their valuable hides, which were fashioned into shoes, belts, and handbags, along with the shooting of alligators as pests and for sport, had decimated populations across the South. In the 1950s and 60s, it was rare to see a wild alligator. In a landmark move, the alligator was placed on the precursor to the endangered species list in 1967, gaining federal protection. The response was one of the most successful conservation efforts in history. Combined with a ban on the interstate trade of illegally sourced hides and rigorous enforcement by game wardens, the population rebounded with explosive speed. By 1987, the alligator was removed from the endangered list and declared fully recovered. Today, the management of the species relies on a concept known as sustainable use conservation. Alligator farming and strictly regulated wild harvests for meat and hides provide an economic incentive for landowners to maintain wetland habitats rather than draining them for development. The value of the alligator effectively pays for the preservation of the swamp, creating a symbiotic relationship between commerce and conservation that has ensured the survival of the species. Yet, this recovery has brought the alligator into conflict with the expanding human population. As Florida and the coastal South have urbanized, building golf courses, canals, and subdivisions into the heart of the wetlands, the interface between human and reptile has blurred. We now have the phenomenon of the nuisance alligator, animals that have lost their natural fear of humans, often due to illegal feeding, and wander into backyards and swimming pools. This requires a constant, dangerous management effort by trappers to remove potentially lethal animals from residential areas, a friction caused by our encroachment into their ancient territory. Beyond the biology and the politics, the alligator occupies a massive, shadowy space in folklore, legend, and popular culture. To the indigenous peoples of the Southeast, particularly the Choctaw, Seminole, and Creek nations, the alligator was a figure of power and duality. In many creation myths, the alligator is the keeper of fire or the sun, often portrayed as a hoarder who must be tricked into releasing the light and heat necessary for the other animals to survive. The distinct rough skin of the alligator's back is often explained in these stories as the result of being scorched by the fire it tried to keep for itself. The teeth and scales were used in ceremonial dress and tools, and the animal was respected as a master of both water and land. In the cosmology of the Deep South, the alligator represents a primal, indifferent force of nature, a creature that demands respect through fear. In modern urban mythology, the alligator has taken on a different, surreal life, most famously in the enduring legend of the sewer alligator. The story, which dates back to the 1930s, claims that baby alligators brought back as pets from Florida were flushed down toilets in New York City, where they survived and grew to monstrous sizes in the sewers, feeding on rats and trash, blind and albino from the darkness. While biologically implausible, due to the cold temperatures and lack of UV light, the myth persists as a symbol of the wild persisting beneath the veneer of civilization, a monster lurking in the plumbing of the metropolis. In the realm of popular culture, the alligator is the star of the creature feature genre, the monster of the lagoon, representing the prehistoric terror that waits in the dark water. It is the central figure of the Florida man meme, a symbol of the chaotic, untamable nature of the state, where headlines frequently feature men wrestling, capturing, or attempting to domesticate these dinosaurs, reflecting a cultural fascination with the danger and absurdity of living alongside such a lethal predator. Looking to the future, the American alligator faces new, existential threats that cannot be solved by hunting bans. The specter of climate change looms large over the low-lying coastal wetlands. Rising sea levels threaten to inundate the freshwater marshes with salt water, a salinity that the alligator, which lacks the salt-excreting glands of the crocodile, cannot tolerate for long periods. This saltwater intrusion pushes the populations inland, compressing them into smaller areas and increasing conflict with humans. Furthermore, the temperature-dependent sex determination of the species means that a warming climate could skew the sex ratios of hatchlings, potentially producing generations of nearly all males, leading to a demographic collapse. The alligator has survived the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, but it now faces the subtle, grinding pressure of a changing atmosphere and a shrinking habitat. To witness an alligator in the wild, floating motionless in the black water of the Okefenokee, or the Atchafalaya, is to witness a perfect biological design. It is a creature of immense quiet power, a survivor that has weathered the turning of the geologic wheel with an indifferent, cold-blooded patience. From the armored scutes of its back to the thunderous resonance of its bellow, from the tenderness of the mother carrying her young to the violence of the death roll, the American alligator is the spirit of the American wilderness. A reminder that even in the age of concrete and silicon, there are still monsters in the water, and they are watching us with eyes that have seen the dawn of time. We must recognize that their survival is not just a matter of biological diversity, but a measure of our own ability to coexist with the wild, the ancient, and the dangerous. The alligator does not ask for our love, but it commands our respect, standing as the gatekeeper of the swamp, the king of the river, and the enduring shadow in the reeds.